It was announced on the MMA Hour that Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler is being moved to the very first fight of the main card at UFC 268, which is a curious move on the surface when you consider it's probably the single most exciting fight on the card. But as reported, it's for the consideration of one of the greatest coaches in the game, Trevor Whitman, who set to corner Gaethje, Rose Namajunas, and Kamaru Usman that night. It's hard to imagine the prospect of having to corner 2 championship fights in a row, let alone 3 extremely high-profile fights, one directly after the other. So thankfully for Whitman and his fighters, one of those fights is going to kick off the main card, and it happens to be the one that's the most anticipated. Having one of the very best fights on the card to start off the event will make for an interesting case study as well. It's not something we've seen before. Who knows? Who's to say that throwing one of the best fights on the card on right out of the gate isn't a better way to kick off these events? I like the idea of a slow build to the high-profile bouts, but it's going to be different going right into a pay-per-view that has a fight that's going to get you hyped right from the very beginning. I think it'll make for an even more exciting intro from Anik and Rogan and the guys as usual, and it'll likely get the audience in attendance getting loud from the jump to set the precedent for the rest of the night. That is, of course, assuming this fight delivers what's being promised, and it will. There were times in the past where a certain stylistic matchup that promised a great fight would serve us a complete dud, and we've been disappointed before. But Gaethje nor Chandler are the types of guys who are not going to deliver. I love the idea of this fight being first on the card. I think the dynamic of having a high-profile fight at the very beginning is going to be felt by the fans, for good or for ill. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I couldn't possibly speak any higher of Justin Gaethje as a fighter. From the very beginning of his UFC career, he has done and said all of the right things. He came into the UFC with a 17-0 record and having been a champion in another organization. And his first order of business and his first media appearance was to announce to the world that at one point or another, he will lose and we will see him get knocked out. It's a reality he just wanted to give everybody a heads up on. Not because it was something that he was worried about happening or anything of the like, just because he wanted to make it clear that his fighting style that has him aptly nicknamed the Highlight is such that there's absolutely no way he doesn't go down in a blaze of glory at one point or another. And sure enough, since he began his UFC career back in 2017, we've seen him go down a couple times, but only to the absolute best in the most talent-rich division in the sport. Guess what? We've also seen him put down a lot of the lightweights' best, and in a thrilling fashion. All 8 of his UFC fights have been amazingly entertaining, and the matchup against Chandler will be no different. Years ago, many hardcore fans of this sport never would have thought we'd see Michael Chandler inside the UFC octagon, but here we go, getting ready to make his 3rd appearance. Much like Gaethje, I can't say enough good things about Chandler as a fighter. His career in Bellator and his run as champion was phenomenal, and he deserves the highest of praise for having such a long career elsewhere, only to finally show up to the UFC and deliver the excitement he has so far. And he's been getting his due. His 2nd fight in the UFC was for the coveted lightweight championship, and his 3rd fight in the UFC is on the biggest card of the year at MSG. He's totally been getting the attention and respect he deserves, and it's nice to see. Now it's just a matter of waiting to see what the hell happens when you lock these 2 in the octagon together. I can envision it going any number of ways, neither of which is boring. But people forget that these 2 are fighters with wrestling bases. But neither are fighters that we know who they are because of their grappling prowess. It's being in the small percentile of the roster that truly has no qualms about stepping in the pocket and staying there and just throwing fury until they either knock someone out or get knocked out themselves that these 2 fighters have made their names off of. And although it doesn't sound like the smartest idea in the world, it's worked well for both of their careers, and I commend them for their courage to do what they do. They always deliver and always spark the crowd in attendance and the millions watching at home. So let Gaethje and Chandler go first. This fight is bound to be a memorable one, whether it's a long drawn-out war or over in just under a minute. It being the first fight on the card is going to be a change of pace, but perhaps it'll be a welcome one. Either way, it's a surefire way to kick off the biggest event of the year with straight chaos, leaving one of the most exciting fighters in the game standing in its wake.